American car makers have all but given up on what was their bread and butter for decades, the mid-size family sedan. In fact, there's only one left. It's this, the Chevy Malibu, which I happen to be filming in Malibu, California. Now, if you could afford to live in Malibu, you wouldn't be caught dead driving a Chevy Malibu. But there's still a market for this, I think, because the Japanese and Korean automakers are making some great products, most of which I've reviewed recently, and I will leave links to those videos down below. But let's see how the Chevy stacks up. This model came out in 2016, and honestly, they haven't done much to change it since, so I'm a little bit skeptical, but let's find out. Let's start with the exterior styling. Now, even though it's 7 years old, I think it still looks really modern. It kind of is reminiscent of the Hyundai I recently drove. It's got the lower, sleeker, long hood with the big grille, and then it flows all the way back to a high deck lid. Now, this is a LT trim, which is second from the top, so it should have some pretty good options, although I'm not seeing a ton of them. But you do get 17-inch wheels. Unfortunately, it still has halogen headlamps, even though they look more modern than they are. It's still old school halogens, which I think is a sin when you see the new HID and LED headlamps and how much better they are. But you do get some fog lamps to supplement your lighting. And it also comes with one-touch door handles on the driver and passenger side. And out back, the trunk is pretty large, which we will look at soon. In fact, let's have a look at that trunk right now. You can access it two ways. Either touch a button down here or on the fob, just hit it a couple times. And it doesn't pop all the way up, which I prefer, because if you have your hands full, you don't have to mess with this. Anyways, the other problem I have is this carpet. Now, it is super, super slippery. So anything you have in here, don't expect it to be in the same place when you get out of the car. I put some groceries in here and it looked like a tornado just went through. But otherwise, it is quite a large trunk. In fact, large enough I think I could fit in it. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, pretty easy fit. Let's have a look at the rear seat room. Now, I've never sat back here, so we're gonna find this out together. For reference, I'm 6'3", and this front passenger seat is just kind of at a normal level. It's not all the way forward. It's not all the way back. But it's really easy to get in. I got a few inches of leg room. I got a few inches of headroom, so I could definitely sit back here on a road trip. Beyond that, it's nothing too special. You got your normal window switch. There's kind of like a little cup holder built into the storage thing here. You got storage pockets. But one thing I'm noticing that is missing is there's no USB charging ports back here. Now, kids have iPads, phones, people in the back seat, they want to charge them, and you can't do that back here. There is a little cigarette lighter, 12 volts. I guess you could get an adapter to charge your stuff, but that's about it. In the center, there is an armrest if you don't have a third person, a couple cup holders, and what is this? Speaking of charging ports, it looks like someone wanted to charge and they weren't able to, so they just stuffed it in here to hold it and must have forgot about it, and the rental car company didn't catch it, so their loss is my gain. Now, this is an American sedan built in Kansas. You'd think a naturally aspirated V6 engine would be found under the hood, but naturally it's not in 2023. A four-cylinder turbocharged 1.5 liter Ecotec is your only engine offering for 2023. They actually discontinued a larger 2-liter version, which had over 200 horsepower, but this one just has 160. It's still decently got some good get up and go. The mid-range boost is actually kind of nice, but it does lack on either the higher or lower range revs, but it'll still get you to 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. Now, this one does have remote start, but I'm not sure if it'll work with the hood open. Let's find out if you can hear this baby roar. That would be a negative. Womp, womp, womp. I had to go inside and start the car like a peasant, but here you go. It's actually quite loud. You do get a lot of interior noise hearing the engine, but maybe if you're like the rad dad, you think that's pretty cool for your kids to be revving the engine. Going inside to the front passenger area, you do have a cloth material on the door, some very hard plastic here. The materials are pretty disappointing. Windows down, only auto on the driver's side, window lock. You got your mirror controls. Your door locks here, storage pocket with a built-in cup holder. Again, that very hard plastic, which continues down here. And over here, got your fuse box, hood release, lights. It does have auto headlights, but one thing that's crazy, remember that material that's over here? I don't think I've ever seen a car that uses that same cloth material on the dashboard. It's not just here. It continues all the way around here. I don't hate it, but I also don't love it. Kind of gives a cheap feeling that you have cloth on there, kind of like cloth seats. Although cloth seats are making a comeback too. Let's start this up here. I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. Push button start. The center clusters, you do still have standard gauges for your tach, your fuel temperature, and speedometer. In the middle, you do have a display cluster, which shows a lot of things, but look at that font. It just looks old. It reminds me of cars from the 90s. There's some good information in here. I just feel like it's like an Apple II color. Do you remember those computers back in the day? Or maybe I'm too old and some of you don't know what I'm talking about. You do get tire pressure monitors, battery voltage, temperature. You get all the stuff you want, just not in a very appealing package. Like there's no color here. It's all the same, just single color. Fuel economy, like I said, I'm only getting about 22. I have been driving it pretty aggressive. That's just in the last 50 miles. I think it's doing a little better than that, but I haven't gotten over 30 miles to the gallon yet. This one, as you can see, has about 30,000 miles on it, so it's well broken in. Up here, you do have steering wheel controls. You can move all that menu options around on this side. You got your Bluetooth phone controls and cruise control. This one does not have radar cruise, which is very disappointing. This is the LT trim. It's a higher trim level, but no radar cruise. On the back, it does have Mopar style buttons. You have a skip track. I don't know if you can see that back there, and a volume button on each side. Take a little bit of getting used to, but once you figure out what each one does, it's really not a problem. In the middle, you have a CarPlay, Android Auto system, decent size. It's not like overwhelming, doesn't take over the whole car. I actually like it. It's really fast and really smooth. It does everything you want to do very quickly. It can be wired or wireless CarPlay, which is always nice. Underneath, usually I hate the auto start stop. I actually really like the auto start stop on this one. In fact, I haven't turned it off once. I barely even notice it. Usually the first thing I do is just click that, take the auto start stop off. I don't want to deal with it, but on this car, I really don't mind it. You have your hazard lights, and then one weird thing is the climate control. Now, it's got all the buttons you need and everything, but you don't really know where you're at. It does give you a temperature here. I think we can turn it on, and you see the temperatures, and you have heated seats, but that's about all the information you get. If you want to know like how fast your fan is going, you turn it up or down here, but then you got to look to the screen to turn it off. So hopefully the screen never goes out, because you're going to be kind of screwed on climate control as well. Everything is controlled up there, and you can also, secondly, control it through the screen if you don't want to use the buttons, but I think most people would prefer to use the buttons. Down below, finally, some USB charging ports. You have USB-C, a standard USB aux cable, and the 12-volt cigarette lighter. A little storage area there. Traction control button. There is no sport mode on this. I don't think it would really do anything. There is a kind of a joke of a manual shifter here, but you're not going to use that in this car. A couple of cup holders, auto parking brake, and this little thing is nice. I've actually used it a lot with your phone. Just put it there, and you can have your phone charging, play CarPlay, and you're not distracted by being on your phone, which is always a good thing. In the center, a nice little storage area, but notably, there's no other power outlets in here. A lot of cars, you usually put a secondary power outlet. So one thing that's really lacking is you get quite a few power options up here, but that's about it for the entire car. Over here, you have some more storage area, a nice size glove box. And one thing I noticed, which I recently found on a Ford too, the carpet is coming off. Might be a bit of a concern for a car this age that it's already falling apart. Gonna take the Malibu out on a little test drive of my favorite stretch of road that kind of has some canyons, some curves, some hills, some bumpiness. So it's a nice little test for this car. You can hear the engine noise creep in here. Now, where this turbo really shines is kind of between 2,000 and 4,000 RPM. Anything below 2, it really has that notable turbo lag, and it takes a second to kick in. Above 4, it's really kind of giving up on you. And I've noticed at lower speeds, it really has a kind of a turbo puking noise, I would call it. Now here's where the bumps come in, and you really notice that this car likes to hop. It feels good until you hit some kind of major bumps and you kind of grip on the wheel a little bit. And as you're gripping the wheel on these curbs, you notice a significant amount of understeer, which would be normal on a front-wheel drive, but this one is a lot. You point the car where you want to go, and it doesn't seem to want to go there. You kind of have to correct for it. Now, some of that might be due to the Goodyear tires on here that don't seem to be great. Other notable things here are the brakes. If you press them down, they're good, and then if you press them a little too hard, the car really stops. Which I guess is good, but it kind of takes you by surprise if you have a kind of a medium stop. Now, driving that little stretch, it's not bad. The hoppiness is a little bit alerting, but it just makes me think how much better the Honda Accord was on that stretch. Actually, it was like ear-to-ear grins driving that car, but this did perform better than the Nissan Altima, I would say, which was really disappointing. That car was embarrassingly slow. So in the end, I think this is a classic case of the American auto manufacturers getting lazy and letting foreign makers eat our lunch. I mean, this is kind of a sad representation of the final family sedan. They haven't done much to it in 7 years, just kind of letting it roll on, hopefully thinking that people that are loyal to Chevy will just buy another Malibu. Well, it's probably going to end after this year, and they're going to have to force people into SUVs, or people are going to look at other markets. The Toyota Camry, Honda Accord, I love both of those cars. They are way better than this for essentially the same money. But if you really are stuck on getting that American car, do what I did. Get this for a week from a rental agency. The rental companies are packed full of these Malibus because they're cheap, because no one wants them. And I think that might be half the reason that GM is still continuing it too, to put it into fleet service. So if you do that, drive it for a week, you don't like it, no harm, no foul. If you do like it, great, I'm happy for you. Go pick one up at your local Chevy dealer. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion though that we'll start to see some more sedans pop up in the American market, because all these manufacturers were pushing for electric and the public in America has been pushing back. So I think there's a happy medium ground to be found in the hybrids. In fact, the new Toyota Camry that comes out next year is going to be hybrid only, and I really think they're onto something there. You have the convenience of not having to search for a charging network, and you can still fill it up and drive 500 miles and get 50 miles to the gallon. It's a win-win situation, and I hope that the American auto manufacturers will get on board with the hybrid situation, because it is a perfect fit for the mid-size American family sedan, which I hope lives on, and this is not the final iteration of.